One individual person's gratitude expressed to one special veteran. That is what the Quilts of Valor organization represents. Beautiful quilts are being worked on daily all over the United States by individuals wishing to show their appreciation to veterans for service given. Stay tuned to see how great the rewards are. My guest is Jerilyn Lightfoot, State Coordinator of the Silicon Valley Quilts of Valor group of quilters for veterans. Welcome, Jerilyn.
Oh, good morning.
Thank you so much for coming.
I'm so excited to be here.
Over 65,000 quilts have been made by individuals to be presented to veterans. Tell us about the Quilts of Valor organization.
Okay. The Quilts of Valor started in about 2003 by a wonderful lady named Catherine Roberts. And she was an Army mom, and while her son was deployed in Iraq, she had quite literally a dream. In this dream, she saw a young man sitting at the end of his bed, and he was slumped over, and he had a demeanor of war all around him. And in the next frame, quite like a movie, she saw the same individual wrapped with a quilt. And then the magical transformation, and so she knew that Quilt of Valor is formed, and it meant quilts equal healing.
How many chapters, or what would you call them?
Basically in 2003 it was a grassroots organization, and it spread through like Facebook, through word of mouth, through quilters all across the country. And so what happened is that people started gathering, and people started doing this as a collaboration of artists and people wanting to do something. The Quilt of Valor is the highest award that a civilian can actually give a military personnel, whether they're a veteran or active duty. The Quilt of Valor, it's a tactile thank you. It's a hug, and a grateful hug from a grateful nation. So when an individual is wrapped in the quilt, it doesn't just only come from us, it comes from every other person in the United States that has a touching heart towards saying thank you. So after the grassroots phase, they officially became a nonprofit organization in 2005. In 2005, then we started growing and growing, and then in 2014 it actually switched to become a membership organization. You can still sew for the Quilts of Valor, and you can still be active participant, but it actually there are actually a little, a little bit of benefits if you are an extra member, and it's a way we can track all the good work that everybody is doing. In Silicon Valley, we actually have we have the Silicon Valley Quilts of Valor, we have the Sewing Stars, the South Bay Blue Star Moms, and we have in Pleasanton, we have the Amador Valley Quilters, and in Morgan Hill, we have the South Valley Quilt Association. So pretty much most of the Quilts of Valor in our area are being produced by these men and women who actually sew. It's a way of honoring for those who have served.
Do they design their own quilts?
Each Quilt of Valor is totally unique, just like us human beings. There are no two quilts that are the same. Every Quilt of Valor, it's stitched with love, and it can take up to a year to make. So the process is that this is the top part, and then there's the backing, and then those two elements in the middle is sort of the sandwich. It's the stuffing, and then it gets sent to a person who does all the top stitching. So it's a collaboration of artists. So it's a different type of skill set and design process.
So actually more than one person then ends up working on it, because the one who does the little stitching around here to bind them together.
It's kind of neat because sometimes the quilts are actually sent across the country. I send some quilts to a wonderful lady in New Mexico to do the long arming, and then our quilts don't only stay in the United States. I mean, we get requests from people all over and who've served. Recently, I just sent a quilt to a gentleman who served in Vietnam, and it was requested by his son, and we sent it to Guam. So that's about the farthest I've ever had to send a quilt.
It must be expensive to purchase all these fabrics and so forth.
Well,
Do they get any help from that?
not as much as I would like.
You were telling me recently you'd spent about, what, $10,000 on quilt fabrics and
Yes.
mailing?
Yes, between every quilter, every person who works on a Quilt of Valor puts their own time, their energy, and their financial resources in the production of this gift, or this award actually, and it can take up to maybe $250 to $500 per quilt to make a quilt, but it is our way of saying thank you, and for that thank you and that healing is priceless. So my husband and I and many other individuals put their resources towards it. It is a nonprofit organization, and we are looking to secure more funding so that we can actually cover more individuals that are so much in need of this wonderful, wonderful gift.
So if quilters want to do something like this from their heart and their hands and so forth, but they don't have the money to purchase all these beautiful different fabrics, is there some place they contact somebody in their area to help them out then?
What I do is my husband and I and the Silicon Valley quilters, we prepare kits, and we have sewing days so the community can actually come in. They can start small. We'll have fabric. They can actually make blocks. Then the blocks turn into quilts, and then so it's a little bit of a process. Sometimes people don't know where to start, but they start a little bit at a time.
So I do have this thing here that says you're recruiting quilters, presenters, long armers, and the long armers are the people who do all this stitching here, and donations, monetary donations for the fabrics, and it does cost money to send.
Yes, it does.
These, I know because I sent one recently. It was like $15.
Yes.
Patriotic fabrics, if anybody has some that maybe they're not using, they could donate to one of these groups. Or if somebody, even quilting supplies, I guess there's a lot of quilters, if they had like this batting that they put behind it, they could donate that. So you're looking for small and large
small
help.
and large donations. The fabric has to be 100% quilting fabric, and you know, we accept a lot of different types of donations, but you have to be mindful of who this is going to. I like little turtles and bunny rabbits and things, but I don't know whether it would quite be appropriate for a Quilt of Valor, because these individuals have signed up and to the dotted line to their life, and we need to make sure that they receive good quality and fabric, and it has to be a good design worthy of their energy.
I think you told me too that after they're made, they're washed so that they're completely clean and are presented where they won't catch anything.
We sometimes have to wear these in hospitals, and so we have to be very mindful of a person's allergies, and also sometimes fabrics can actually dye a bit, the bleed, and so we want to make sure that things are color fast, so we try to wash them and present them. Sometimes they could they look a little bit wrinkled after they've been washed, but it's more comforting too, because we want them to use them soft and cuddly.
I can just imagine how wonderful it must feel to be wrapped in something that somebody made especially for them.
Most of the time, the gentlemen are just a loss of words, and they can get emotional about it. You know.
How do you decide who receives a quilt?
Well, for two ways. They can be local recipients. Somebody we know through local contacts, through awareness. People can actually log on to the Quilts of Valor, and they can actually log on to the site. They can also nominate themselves. There are many individuals who need that type of help. Log on to the website. They can nominate your friends, your family who know that have served.
We had an experience that there's a Korean veteran who'd been on the show recently for a different subject, and his home had been burned to the ground recently, and he had nothing but the shirt and shoes that he had on when he was outside the house. He lost all his pictures of the war and his medals, all his medals that he had gotten. And so I asked you about it. Could he have one? And that's when you showed up at my house with a quilt for Kenneth Goodman, this Korean veteran.
It can make a difference.
It did. It was the only thing he had after all that. So it was wonderful.
I hope that it received him well, and that it helped to heal his loss.
I'm sure it did. And then another thing that I've been hearing recently too, I know in this area and a lot of other areas, they have like something once a year that is put on for homeless veterans. There's a big gathering, they come together, and it's like, it's a kind of camaraderie, but if they need help. And I understand that they receive quilts. Are these any quilts that come from your group? Or?
Not from mine yet. I believe it's called the Stand Down.
Yes,
and
the Stand Down.
I would love to do that. I honestly do not have the resources yet to do that, but it would be the perfect location to be able to help the individuals. It is something that needs to be done. There's so much, so much that needs to be sewing.
Especially for the homeless, it would mean so much. For the homeless veterans, you know, who...
Catherine Roberts actually said that many individuals didn't know whether they would, if somebody spent a year making something, but didn't know whether they would want to go to a homeless person. And Catherine Roberts was emphatic in saying that that person who is homeless deserves a quilt much more than anyone else. And if it meant it was healing them, giving them something, they deserve it and need it. So yes, that is a perfect place.
How did you personally get into this?
I never sewed. I used staple, duct tape, and when my mom passed in 2003, my son was in Iraq at the time, and I inherited her sewing machine, and I needed something to do, so I started just sort of taking some fabric and putting pieces together. For the first years, I made memorial quilts, and then I found out about the Quilts of Valor in 2010, and I've been sewing for them ever since 2010.
Well, let's talk about your son now. He was all set to enter college, his college prep. Well, when he graduated from high school at 17, he decided that he wanted to join the Marine.
Yes, but he's considered a 9/11 Marine, and it was not something that a mom would normally expect, but it was right for him, you know.
So you signed for him?
I had to sign because he was 17, yes, so it was an early enlistment, and so yes, we went down to the recruiting office, and I had to sign up because I knew that it was something in his heart.
I'm sure you're very proud of him. I see that you're wearing your medal because he is a sniper. We want to show a video of vets who receive these quilts. It just shows how wonderful they feel getting those quilts. So we'll watch that now.
Okay.
Quilts of Valor volunteers make and give quilts compassionately, from their hearts, with no thought of thanks or reply. Sometimes, however, a recipient takes the time to say what receiving a Quilt of Valor means.
Both my knees were shot out. My tibia was broken. I have 4 bullets in my upper arm, and I got shot toward the back of my head. When I look at my quilt, it reminds me of a lot of things that I had done. It reminds me of a lot of things that people have done. I do get a sense of pride when I look at it.
It was a pretty intense combat situation, again in the Hobo Woods, and I was on the outside of a tank shooting a machine gun, and I got hit by an RPG and instantly lost my left leg and my right hand, and also got shrapnel in both eyes. The quilt, sometimes when I walk by the guest room, or I'm in the guest room, it winks at me, and I'll go over and just lay down on it, and it just feels good. And it's just an example of someone's gratitude for what I've been through in the service.
I can't help but see the quilt and you know, automatically kind of think of Afghanistan. You know, I am extremely proud of what I did overseas. I appreciate this quilt probably more than I appreciate, you know, any medal that it could have pinned on my chest, you know, because, you know, this was given to me by a civilian. It was, you know, for my service.
And I held back the tears when I did receive it. In fact, I did shed some tears. It felt very good that Vietnam veterans was finally recognized as a serviceman in the fight of the war we had. I consider the people that created the quilt part of my family now. I mean, they made this quilt for us, the veterans, and the way I see it is that they're my sisters in arms.
It was an honor. It was something I didn't expect. And matter of fact, with some of the guys that I know that went through some of the worse things than I did, I felt they deserved it. The people that deserved probably the quilts are not here anymore, or they never came home. I think it's actually a site of comfort. You know, it's if we didn't get appreciated when we came home, this is appreciation. But I can't say how special it is. It's the only thing that's been given me since I've been home.
There was a reassuring quality to having something made for me that that touched me very deeply.
I enjoy showing it to them, and they're going to look at it whether they like it or not. So that's where it is. Everybody can see it, and I'm real proud of it. First place, I've never had anything like this, so I take a lot of pride in it, and I just feel bad about the other guys. They didn't get one. That's the only thing.
National service is not the household term it once was in a wartime America. But anyone can honor a combat veteran with a healing quilt of valor. If you're a quilter already, pull some fabric from your stash and get started. If you're not a quilter, find one to take you under their wings and help you honor an American touched by war.
We wanted to give your son a quilt because he's very much working and deserving one. And you and your sister worked on a quilt for him. We wanted to have him here today, but he's been back in Washington and couldn't make it. But would you show us this quilt that you've made for him? Now, one thing that they do before you open it up, one thing that they put on every quilt that is given, they put this little corner on there that tells who it's for, who made it, when they made it, and also down below it tells a bit about what the vet's story was, where he served, or something about him. It mentions down here. So that's very much customized for that particular vet who receives it.
Every Quilt of Valor has a story. And when we present it to the individual, we want that to become part of their story. And so they carry it on. We try to capture the individuals who made it and a little bit of our heart and sentiment on it. For this particular one, we decided to call it Always Faithful, because that's what our son has always been, always faithful to his job and to his family.
All right. And then for each vet who receives a quilt, he gets a certificate. So let's...
The certificate is, it's actually very, very, the quilt is very touching, and then this is just sort of the formality of it. And every quilt, so if my son were here, I would be reading this, or to any individual I read it to, on behalf of the Quilts of Valor Foundation, in recognition of your service and sacrifice to this nation. It is a privilege to serve honor and comfort upon you through the award of this Quilt of Valor. Though we may never know the depth of your sacrifice to protect and to defend the United States of America, as a gesture of gratitude from a grateful nation, we award you this Quilt of Valor.
So it's to your son. His name is?
Amatangelo. We call him AJ for short.
Okay. Okay, so it has his name on there, and it has his mother's signature on there.
Yes, and the executive director of the Quilts of Valor too.
Okay. Well, do you want to open it up just a little bit?
Sure. Actually, my sister-in-law, Grace Fairbanks, made this quilt, and we worked on it as a collaboration. So about 3 individuals. And let's see. We got it upside down. It always happens.
Oh.
Here we go.
Okay. Okay,
and
so
this one says, "Home of the Free."
I get it here.
That's a beautiful eagle. Duty, honor, glory, freedom, land of the free, home of the brave.
Yeah,
and it is exquisitely, exquisitely long-armed. And I did all the, my part is I pieced these, and my sister-in-law Grace did the rest. And it was just a magical quilt for my son.
Yeah, so I'm sure it meant a lot to you to make one for your son.
I can't wait to wrap him around in it.
I know. Now, one thing I'm noticing here. Let's just do this. Just put it on our laps here.
Doesn't it feel great?
It does.
Doesn't it? And it hasn't been washed yet, but it just feels, you know, homey.
Well, the one thing I'm noticing now, this is one that would fit a bed or a big wall hanging, I guess, if you had the room. And this is for a bed, but most of the quilts are being made, they're for laps or shoulders.
The Quilt of Valor does have standards of sizes, and the minimum has to be 55 by 65. Okay. We actually, I prefer 60 by 80, so this is a little bit bigger than 60 by 80, and that one's about 60 by 72.
So they could wrap up their whole bodies in this.
Yes, yep.
Now, do most people make smaller, like lap robes,
in order for it to be a Quilt of Valor, it has to be a minimum of 55 by 65. Okay. We do occasionally get a few special requests for special needs, maybe for an individual, for a wheelchair or something. But so we will use those. They're harder to place. It's a special request. We will do something like that. But generally speaking, we want them to be a little bit larger. 60 by 80 is perfect.
Okay. So again, if somebody wants to recommend somebody to receiving a quilt, they would contact
Quilts of Valor Foundation is the website.
Okay. So www.qovf.org. And then they could say, I know someone who deserves a Quilt of Valor, and they just contact them, and then they will get a local representative like yourself.
Yes.
You would be contacted then.
If you have a person that you know, a relative maybe that lives in Nevada, and you go to the website, it'll download to that person in Nevada. If it comes to California, it will come to 3 individuals. If you know somebody locally that needs a Quilt of Valor, they can email me personally.
Okay. And this is your your email address. Jerilyn Lightfoot. It's jerilyn.lightfoot@qovf.org. Quilts of Valor Foundation, California State Coordinator. So you really got into it, Jerilyn.
Oh, I did, and I just an amazing. My husband and I, we keep so busy. Just about every weekend we're doing something. I don't have as much time to sew, but today, after I leave, I'm going to go visit my friends and sew. I'm really excited about that too.
Okay.
Does it feel nice?
It does.
Doesn't it?
It does. And I'm just thinking, you know, whether or not we are in favor of a war, we certainly are grateful for those who have given up so much of their energy and their lives and things they've missed out on and all that they've been through. And we certainly do appreciate that. And I think about these quilters, you know, they're working each little thing that they work on. And I wonder what they're thinking. Oh, I'm making this for a special vet, you know. What's in their hearts as they're doing this is so nice. And
when I'm sewing, I'm actually thinking, I don't always know who they're going to go to, and I'm always thinking about the individual, and it's sort of the magical part. It's like when you're working on something for a year, it's like almost having a baby, and then when it goes to that person, and after it's been awarded, it's like the umbilical cord gets cut, and then it goes to the rightful owner, and it's just an amazing thing. I'm very proud of the work that we're doing. There's about 10,000 quilters across the United States that are sewing, and you know, it's a small group, but we're doing a lot of good work, you know, very necessary work.
Well, it's a personal thank you, isn't it? And I know that the vets feel that way when they receive it. Somebody did something nice and recognized us in their own personal way. So thank you for doing it. And
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. We're so happy you joined us for this program. We love having you and look forward to having you again next time. Goodbye for now.